Dyslexic Week?
Yeah, so I'm Amanda Hornby. I'm a qualified dyslexia tutor. Qualified to assess for access arrangements for exams in secondary school, and I've just finished the training to diagnose dyslexia and to be a teacher assessor. Before I started this role in February this year, I worked for 14 years in secondary school, and I supported students from years 7 to 11 who all had some kind of moderate learning difficulty, and a lot of them were dyslexic. And I was fascinated with dyslexia because, I could have these brilliant conversations with these young people, and yet in class they were able to engage in the lessons, but as soon as you asked them to start writing something down, that was when the difficulty started, and I wanted to find out a little bit more about that. And that's why I went down the dyslexia specialist route, to help me understand what is happening in the dyslexic brain and why all of this information is there in the brain, and yet there is no or very little output, with depending on the individual as well. It's Dyslexia Awareness Week this week, and the British Dyslexia Association are joining in with this. And what we would like to do as a company is raise awareness, as much as people as possible, try and get rid of any kind of myths that might be generally thought of about dyslexia, and promote the positives about it as well.
You highlight some of the causes of dyslexia and identify some of the causes.
Dyslexia is a neurobiological condition. So it's neuro means that it's part of the individual's brain and how it is made, and biological means that it's part of their physical makeup. So it is a genetic condition that runs in families, and you may find that within a group of people or within a family, that one will have mild variation of dyslexia, where another might have a very profound effect. The dyslexia might have a very profound effect on their day-to-day lives. Dyslexia affects 3 parts of the brain, and it's usually on the left side of the brain, and it affects the phonological awareness, the verbal memory, and the verbal processing speed. And what we find is that in a non-dyslexic, these 3 areas of the brain on the left side, when they're developing skills, the literacy skills, the numeracy skills, that these 3 areas of the brain can send messages to each other, and they can develop in their skills. We have a part of the brain called the cerebellum, which is back at the back of the brain, and that is responsible for making skills automatic. If the way that somebody's being taught their literacy skills isn't using multisensory techniques, such as the auditory, the visual, and the kinesthetic, which is doing and moving things with their hands or with their mouth, the way that the mouth moves, then the cerebellum part of the brain doesn't recognize that it's a new skill, and so it kind of stays dormant. Whereas if you introduce the multisensory way of teaching for a dyslexic individual, that's when the cerebellum will fire up and it says, oh, this is a new skill, so I'm going to start to develop these new neural pathways to this new skill. So that's the reason why dyslexia occurs, because of the different pathways in the brain and how many of the neural pathways are built, depending on the way that they're taught.
So for a person who has dyslexic, could you tell what it's like for their day-to-day life and what they come across, any barriers, or how they can avoid those barriers?
So they will have difficulties, and remember, every dyslexic is unique, so they will have their own level of difficulty and challenges. So you may find in some of them that the literacy acquisition is quite difficult. So it might be that they are unable to decode the words that they are trying to read. They have not been explicitly taught things like punctuation to help with to fluently read. And what you might find is that some of them spend so much effort to decode some of the words on the page that the comprehension is lost, because they're looking at each individual word separately and not putting it into the context. So it can lead to exhaustion with the actual act of trying to read. And also with the same kind of effort into writing as well. So when you encode, which means that what you have to do is you have to think about the word that you're trying to write. You have to think about the letter sequence, the graphemes and the phonemes that need to be put together, and all of this for a non-dyslexic is like an orchestra of skills that is automatic, whereas with a dyslexic it's really, you have to think very, very hard about each individual aspect of it. So therefore the reading and the writing part of dyslexia is a lot slower because that skill isn't automatic in comparison to somebody who is not dyslexic. Other parts of being dyslexic might affect organisation, it might affect the memory, so they might have very difficulty with their short-term and working memory. The memory is like a shelf at the front of your brain, and a non-dyslexic may be able to hold on like a number of like 10 or 12 books as each individual portions of things to remember, whereas a dyslexic might find it really difficult to remember 3 or 4. And once you all start to overload that memory, if you add on another book to the shelf, the first one will fall off. So the working memory and the processing skills of information might be that little bit slower.
What are the most frequently asked questions about dyslexia?
Well, I help to run my local dyslexia association where I live in the northwest of England, and many people ask me, am I dyslexic, first of all, and how do I get a diagnosis? So what we do as a local dyslexia association is we have regular meetings, and it's a place where people can experience other people's experiences with dyslexia as well. So it's nice to share their experiences, and you'll find that they might come up with lots of other questions as well. Things like, how do I get help at work, what kind of support can I get at work? Can I have help to find a job, for example? Where can I find a dyslexic tutor in my area? And what we can do in the local dyslexia associations are to either provide that assistance on a one-to-one, or at least then we can signpost them to the correct people who live in the local areas. So yeah, first of all, really is, how do I know that I've got dyslexia? And what we can do is we can go through some kind of a checklist that are on the BDA website actually. So you can have a checklist, go through the indicators that is on there, and see what is applicable to you really on a day-to-day basis. Do you recognize some of the indicators in you, whether you're a child or whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult? So all of that information is on our website as well.
Fantastic. And as going forward, with this event, that's the awareness week, have you got any stories that you would love to share to our viewers or listeners that you've come across someone very nice? And also, it takes them time to learn and listen, and I'm right in saying they can only look at different colors as well.
That is visual difficulties, and what you'll find is that can be independent of being dyslexic. So you can have visual difficulties on its own, but it is a regular co-occurring difficulty with dyslexics. And what that is where the two eyes are seeing two different images, and it's an overstimulation of the occipital lobe, I think it's called, at the back of the brain. And one way to be able to treat that is to read through colour. So it might be that people find it easier to write on a different colour page. It might be yellow or blue or pink, whatever it is that helps them. Or they might have a physical overlay that they read through. and again, that just helps to calm down the words on the page, and they might look like there are coloured dots that are coming through, or it might be that the words look like they are vibrating on the page, or it might even look like they are separating, and there is rivers of white if it's on a white background running through the page. So that is visual difficulties, and that can be to be able to get a diagnosis of that, you need to go to a specialist behavioural ophthalmologist, but it's always wise to go through an optician first to make sure that there's no other underlying conditions before you go to the behavioural ophthalmologist, really. So that's about the visual difficulties that some people may experience when they're reading.
The typical development of a child with dyslexia. Well, we've got a little bit of time, but can you elaborate on what the typical development is of a child with dyslexia?
Yeah, so when you're looking at the very early years, and all of this information is on the British Dyslexia Association website, but the very early years would be things like speech development can be slower in comparison to their peers. It might be that they are using sort of baby language more longer than normal, or they might mix up words like cucumber or flutterby, that kind of thing. And instead of, it can be quite comical for a little one to, mix their words up like that, but try and make sure that you correct them, but make sure that you have like eye contact so that they can see how the mouth moves. So things like unable to sit still, not wanting to look at books, or words on pages, that kind of thing. Quite daydreamy, and that's because the brain is trying to have a brain break and to refocus. All of these small indicators, if they are not picked up in the early years and have something to address those, then it can lead to literacy difficulties later on in the school. So, but all of these indicators will be on our website. Improve your literacy skills by having a multisensory specialist dyslexia tutor. If you're not able to do that and you're working your way through school, then communicate with teaching staff that a multisensory fashion is best for your way of learning. And what I found in school is that teachers are very good at adapting their teaching styles. However, some teaching staff fall into a train of the teaching in just one format. So if they are, for example, an auditory learner, they will teach in an auditory fashion instead of thinking to themselves, well, I've got maybe up to 30 children in the group. I need to be able to reach out and teach in a multisensory fashion to be able to reach to everybody. So yes, you may have an auditory fashion. You may have the same information using concrete materials, or you may have the same information in a visual way, just so that they can reach out to all of their students in their classroom. Yeah, some teachers forget about the 10% of the classrooms who are not auditory learners. Very often you'll find that children will sit in a classroom and sit and just listen, but if they are not an auditory learner, then they're not going to be able to engage in that lesson. You need to create a multisensory way of teaching the same information. It might just be in a small group. Don't forget, there are some fantastic teachers out there who are aware of this kind of teaching and being able to reach out to that small number of pupils or students in their class. But generally, I find that there is one way, really, isn't there? You kind of stand in front of the class and you kind of talk to everybody. But if you're not engaging in that young person, then they're not going to be able to make as much progress as everybody else. obviously this is our mission, isn't it, with the British Dyslexia Association, is to make dyslexia to have that awareness right across all of society. There are more and more schools and colleges that are becoming much more dyslexia friendly. However, there will always be that, small, percentage who are completely unaware of any kind of techniques, and this is where we can help. We have something called the BDA quality mark, and what that will enable organisations, either workplaces or schools, to be dyslexia friendly. And it's a positive statement to say, we welcome dyslexia and neurodiverse conditions, and we've already got these systems in place to help these individuals who come to us who need this adaptation with their teaching or with their workplace.
So what are the symptoms to look out for a parent or a guardian who has a child with dyslexia?
What we're looking for, let's say a child in primary school, for example, if the indicators that I've already mentioned about the early years have been noticed, but no interventions have been put in place, the brain of a child is pretty much developed around about the age 7 or 8. And what we've said is that a full diagnostic assessment can be completed after the age of 8. It used to be 7, but because of the COVID pandemic, we've the leaders in this area have said that we need to have a diagnostic assessment at the age of 8 now. But what we can do is we can have checklists, and what we're looking out for are things like a slow progress in reading, the difficulty in understanding the smallest phonemic codes to put together, unable to break down syllable division, for example, or how to manipulate words. So, for example, if I gave the word cat to a child and then took the C off the front, I would say, what are you left with? They will be unable to manipulate that as at. So things like that. And it's things like being a little bit daydreamy, easily distracted. There's a couple of different ways that you can see it. It's a bit like if you are, they might be go very insular and very quiet and into themselves because they can't engage in the lesson. Likewise, they might be kind of the center of attention. They like people to look at them, and they like to distract the whole lesson to what's going on, because what they're doing is it's a deflective reaction. So they'll be able to sit and listen to the lesson and to engage verbally. However, as soon as they start to try and write, they will find something else to do, like they might want to go to the toilet, or they might want to start sharpening pencils, or any kind of deflective action like that to stop them from having to do the work. It might be that the handwriting is not formed properly, and that's one of the ways that I find that some dyslexics try to hide their poor spelling techniques, is to have untidy writing as well. Things like when you're asking them to copy down from the board if they're in school, then they either just look at the board and not look at what the hand is doing on the paper, or if they look at the board and then try and remember what it is that they've written down, that they have to write down, and then by the time they've written it down, they've looked up again to see what it is, realised that they've done it wrong, crossed it out. So lots of crossings out as well is an indicator. And then the not wanting to read aloud, not wanting to volunteer or write anything on the board and things like that. So all of these kind of indicators can be found on our website, but they're just a few of them that you can look out for children. I can assess for exam access arrangements, and what you do for that is generally either at the age of at the end of year 9 or the beginning of year 10 before they go into the formal GCSE exams. And what they would do is they will be assessed on a number of different skills, and they, dependent on their scores, they would be recommended for certain additional support during exams. So it might be that they need a reader, a physical reader or a physical scribe to help them with their writing, or if they are very techie and their normal way of working is through using laptops, so either using a keyboard or speech to text technology, or it might be that they just need some extra time, so it's usually about 25% extra time to help them with their thought processing and to give them that time to organise the writing and then write it down. Or it might just be that they need a couple of rest breaks in between, just to reprogram their brain and their thought processes and things like that. So there's a number of different support strategies that you can have if you're going into exams. What I do is I deliver very bespoke training to organisations or schools. And I travel up and down the country and I meet some fantastic people and organisations who really want to raise awareness of dyslexia within their organisation, and I'm really, really enjoying that. I love meeting new people. I love meeting dyslexics who are able and are confident enough to share their own experiences. So yes, I just want to keep on doing what I'm doing at the moment. I'm loving it, loving meeting new people and reaching out to everybody. The British Dyslexia Association's main website, which is bdadyslexia.org.uk, and on there is a contact page that you can contact us. There is a telephone number that's a helpline if you want to speak to somebody, if you prefer to speak, or there is an email facility that you can get in touch with us as well. I think it's helpline at bdadyslexia.org.uk, Facebook and Instagram, and so on. So you can contact us via those social media platforms as well. Dyslexia is DYSLEXIA.